you know I'm recording. So hopefully everyone had an opportunity to read the chapter and look at the PowerPoint, or even listen to the Chapter 7 lecture on the PowerPoint if possible. And so we're going to focus mostly on questions. So like not a review of the PowerPoint per se or like details specifically over the chapter, but just kind of some questions that you guys had. I realized about maybe like 10 minutes before we started that I left the textbook in my office. So I don't have the textbook to refer back to, but I will try to do my best to answer with reflection to the chapter and what content's in there. So to start off with questions, I had some emailed to me, so I'm going to go over those first, and then anybody on the call, you guys can jump in. So the first one is regarding cognitive behavioral strategies. Why might REBT not work with lower IQ individuals? Does it have to do with their emotions clouding accurate thinking? So when you think about REBT as a technique, it involves metacognition, which is how we think about thinking. And that is a really difficult concept for individuals who might have borderline intellectual functioning or lower IQs. Sometimes they may not have a direct connection or a direct idea on like what their thoughts are and how they impact their behaviors and emotions and things like that. And so that technique, because it focuses so much on being able to like stop yourself and identify your thinking, it might not work well with some individuals. I mean, it might work okay. It really depends on that person's abilities and stuff like that. But it's not something that would be recommended. The next question is, what strategy or strategies do you find yourself using most in your personal work? And so, as I've said before, I tend to use a lot of CBT techniques. So, I do REBT pretty frequently, and so I look a lot at like the ABCDE technique. I also do some cognitive work where it's like kind of clarifying an individual's thoughts and perceptions on things to help them make decisions or choose directions that they want to go, looking at all of the options. I use a lot of mindfulness. I guess I would kind of be considered a mindful-based CBT therapist. And so mindfulness I find to be really helpful in slowing down our thinking so we can really connect with the here and now and what our present thoughts are. And so I see them as being very connected. So helping clients learn mindfulness techniques, I think helps with the process of then going into CBT work. That's mostly it. I mean, I take some things from other stuff. Like sometimes I'll do a little bit of narrative work about like changing your story. A lot with like values clarification and things like that. So that's mostly it. Depending on the situation and whether it's appropriate, can you use a mix of the strategies during a session with a client or just stick to one? So in most cases, when you're in a session, it's going to be best to sort of stick with like one technique or strategy, because if you're kind of bouncing all over the place, it's maybe a little bit confusing for the client. And so it's typically best to kind of like, so if I'm working on, say, the ABCDE technique with a client, in our first session that we're working on it, I'll probably explain what the technique is and the way that our thinking interacts with our behaviors and emotions, and do a lot of psychoeducation. Then maybe do some examples of it, like this is how it kind of looks, and I'll play through examples, and then we'll say, I'll ask the client for some of their thoughts that they want to change or thoughts that they're able to recognize, and then we start working on them and kind of work on it together. At that point, I'll usually assign them sort of some homework and say, like, work on these on your own, work on identifying some of the thinking patterns. Sometimes sessions might be just focused on them talking out some scenarios so that we can together work on what kinds of irrational or unhelpful thinking they're doing. Like, is it personalization? Is it generalization? Is it catastrophizing? Is it, whatever, and helping them to identify that. And usually that's going to take the time from your session. And so using multiple techniques, you'd almost have to be like rushing through them to be like, okay, then you do this, and then next you do this, and the client might feel overwhelmed. I think that once I've been working with clients for some time, so clients that I've had for several months or even, a year or more, sometimes a couple different strategies or techniques might show themselves in session, because as they're talking about something and we're working on something, I might say, oh, you see what you did there? And then we kind of go back to things we've used in the past. But typically with newer clients or clients that you're like currently working on, specific issues with, we wouldn't necessarily want to work in different areas in that same session. So those are the questions that I got emailed. I don't know if you all on the call had some questions prepared, or can come up with some questions now that from chapter 7.
I had a question. My question is, when using integrated strategies, is it best to tackle one problem at a time or multiple problems at a time during the session?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, it sort of depends on how interconnected those issues are. And so if the client is bringing, different issues from different realms, like career, workplace issues and interpersonal issues in their family and stuff like that, they may be a little bit separated and you might sort of have to tackle one at a time. There are other situations where they're connected. So for example, if they're having issues interpersonally, it could be impacting their workplace, it could be impacting their family, their friendships, and so on. And so some of those can be tackled together because you're working on those same interpersonal skills that maybe they're lacking or they're struggling with, or like maybe they have difficulty with like reading and understanding other people's emotions, and so that is causing those issues. So it sort of depends on how interconnected the issues the client is bringing to you are. And so I'm trying to think of an example. I have a client I'm working with now who came in for issues with gender dysphoria, and they've presented some issues related to their significant other in like communicating and feeling like their significant other is acting in hostile ways towards them. And at first I kind of thought maybe they were different issues, like maybe that predated the them coming out to their partner. But then I ended up kind of connecting the dots and realizing through the client explaining things that it was directly connected, that the significant other was really struggling and having a hard time with the partner coming out as trans, and it being so long into their relationship, kind of feeling like they were lied to, or something was kept secret from them. And so we can kind of work on those together, because it really is a part of the communication stuff, and the issues with the partner are really part of them going through this transition period. A situation where they might not be connected is if that communication really predated that and they've always struggled with their communication styles, and maybe the partner was really aggressive in their communication with them, and they've always kind of taken the passive route and become very passive with their partner. Then that might be sort of a separate issue, because it didn't result from that. It was something that historically had been there in the relationship. So does that sort of help in
Yes.
differentiating that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What other questions do we have?
You had mentioned mindfulness and that you use that a lot. Wouldn't that, I mean, you use it for CBT and REBT like you had said, but it would be good to use it for every approach, right? I feel like that's a very basic question.
Yeah, mindfulness can really be integrated with, I want to say all, but I'm just going to say most approaches. There may be some that it doesn't fit. I mean, it might be a little bit more directive than person-centered. I mean, person-centered really is that reflective listening and things like that, but you still could use those techniques and be person-centered and also engage in like mindfulness training and like work through those things with the client. And so I think even there you could still integrate it. It's good for working with somatic experiencing and getting into the body. Yeah, so I mean, there's no technique, there's no other strategies and techniques that I can think of that it would be a bad combination with, but maybe they exist.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. What else? What other questions you guys have? And I kind of scroll the PowerPoint to see if there's anything else that I want to kind of touch on or point out. I think that one thing that I noticed with this textbook is I don't totally love how they broke up the chapters, like chapters 5, 6, 7, and I think even 8 to an now, well, maybe not 8, more 5, 6, and 7. I think it makes it a little bit confusing. And so if you need kind of some help and guidance with that, let me know. I think to some extent, slide number 5 in this PowerPoint kind of helps with looking at how these work together. And so we identify our theoretical approach based on, you know, what we believe, you know, human nature is and how we develop issues and how we can work on them and, you know, the process of counseling. And then within that is the helping strategies and things that we can use to engage with clients, and then specific techniques are under that. And so they should all really connect to an extent. So like, again, if, you know, my theoretical approach is CBT, it doesn't mean that all of my helping strategies and specific techniques have to be under that, but they definitely have to coordinate in some way, and really match our beliefs as far as our counseling approach. So anyway, so I think that slide really helps kind of differentiate that. Also, the way this chapter kind of broke things up between affective, cognitive, behavioral, and blends of those. I think you kind of almost have to take them back to chapters 5 and 6 and look at where they fit. But I think that even the strategies that like solely focus on affective or solely focus on cognitive or behavior, or even like a blend of the two, it doesn't mean that those other parts aren't part of it. So like, one criticism that some people have of CBT, so cognitive behavioral techniques, is that they're not emotional enough, that they don't focus enough on the affective realm. When in reality, you are impacting the affective realm, right? Because you're focusing on the way the thoughts are impacting how we're feeling and thus how we behave. And so the affective realm can be a really big part of that. It's just not the main part that we target. It's something that has an impact due to changes we make in those other realms. And so when you look at these, I don't want you to think if I select a cognitive one, all I'm doing is focus on thinking. We're not dealing with behaviors or emotions at all. You are going to deal with those things, and those things are going to be impacted by the treatment that you're doing. It's just not where your focus is. So hopefully that kind of helps you a little bit with that. And I apologize, I mentioned it on the chapter 7 lecture. I need to fix this. Slide number 23 is in the wrong place. It's about decision making, and I have it after the behavioral strategies, but it should really be up with the cognitive strategies. I just kind of accidentally put it in the wrong place. And then the strategies that cut across domains are most of the ones that we talked about last week, kind of the second, I don't know if it'd be considered second, but more of the newer wave treatments cut across, you know, those domains overall, all three of them, the feminist, multicultural, the multimodal, therapy, ACT, different integrative strategies, constructivist, ecological, and systems. Systems is usually what the focus in like marriage and family counseling is, but it doesn't mean that individual therapists can't think from an ecological systems perspective as well. And that's pretty much it. I mean, my main suggestion is to really engage in the exercises that are in the chapter in the textbook, and also the additional ones that I give you in the PowerPoints, because that's a lot of what we might be doing in classes to practice these and to learn a little bit more about them. But since we're not in class, obviously we're not able to do that together. And so take a look at those, work on those. If you encounter any issues or you feel like you're not quite understanding how the technique would look in the counseling space or something like that, feel free to message me, and then, you know, I can help you out. And then when it gets closer to time for our final, we'll really kind of consider what was addressed in these meetings, what's addressed in the PowerPoints, and focus on those areas for the exam, so that the exam doesn't cover things that we weren't really able to cover together. So yeah, so anybody else have any questions on chapter 7? Let me see if I got another. No, I thought I might have gotten another email with questions, but it wasn't. Okay, so does anybody have questions in general about the course, about what's coming up, how we're doing things? Anybody have any concerns, anything like that?
So moving forward, is this how we're going to like conduct our classes?
Yeah, is that I will send out the PowerPoint with a lecture component so that you can listen to that. And then bring any questions to these meetings that you'd like. We'll go over them. I'll record it. I'll post this up for you guys to listen to. Hopefully that will be a way for us to cover as much as possible. You know, once they say that we can get back on campus, we can resume that. My guess is that we probably will finish out the semester this way. You guys already took exams on Blackboard, so you're used to that. So that's how we'll do the final. I am really hoping that we'll get at least one face-to-face class before the semester ends, but you know, as time is going on, I don't know that that'll happen. But I definitely want to hear from you all if there are things that you feel like might be helpful and they're possible for me to do, then, you know, I will try to do them. So let me know what's working for you, what's not working for you, and if you have any ideas or thoughts on, you know, what could be more helpful. We can definitely do that. Also, I'd say try to stay in contact with your peers. If you have anybody's information, you guys can definitely do meetings, you know, through FaceTime, Google, whatever. There are free forms of Zoom. The meetings are only 40 minutes, but I'm sure that's plenty of time. So definitely connect if you can or if you need to. And like I said, if you have any suggestions at all, feel free to message me. And let me know, and I'm kind of willing and open to try anything that might be helpful for you all. So yeah. The other thing I do want to mention is I sent out an announcement this morning from our dean who's asking about technology and stuff. And I know that there are some people in our class who might not be on the call now, but might listen to this later, especially that don't have access to a laptop or a computer or even Wi-Fi. So I'm hoping that that survey, if you guys all participate in it, will help people get what they need. I'm hoping that they'll have some laptops or some options for students, so that you guys can get what you need out of the course. But yeah, so definitely fill out that survey so that he can make whatever decisions he needs to, and hopefully help you all out. So check that out and fill it out as soon as possible. I think that he had asked if we could send it out by tomorrow morning. So I think he's hoping that you guys will complete it within the next couple days. So, all right. Anything else before we wrap up our meeting for today?
So are we going to continue to meet every day for our regular class time and go over the PowerPoints here?
Yeah, so I'll have one of these scheduled for each Wednesday at 5:30. I'm not gonna like I said, I'm not gonna go over the PowerPoint step by step because I already recorded that in the PowerPoint. It has a lecture component. You can just hit like play slideshow and it should play. The first ones that I posted, it didn't save, but this one that I redid, it is saved in there. So you should be able to see that. I don't know if it plays on phones. You might have to look at it on a computer. But definitely try to listen to that and look at the PowerPoint before these and read the chapter so that you can come with questions. And these meetings will be just focused on any questions you guys might have about the material or anything that wasn't clear, and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Will your meeting ID be the same for each Zoom meeting as well?
I don't know exactly how it works with meeting ID number, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep scheduling them and I'll send out an announcement that'll have the next one scheduled.
Okay.
So that way you'll get a new link each time, even if it is the same, you'll still get that new link.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do
so
we
definitely
still-
check. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, do we still need to send in our questions to you, or is it kind of like if we attend, then we can call it even?
Yeah, if you attend, you just bring your questions with you to ask. But if you're not going to attend, like I said, some students had sent me emails to give me some questions that they wanted covered here because they weren't able to attend. So you don't have to send me any questions unless you know you're not going to be here. Send them beforehand so that I can cover them. Yeah. And what I was going to say is just keep checking your announcements on Blackboard. That's the way I'm going to be communicating with you guys. And so I'm going to give you as much information as I have. I don't know, as soon as I have it. I did, I think I finished re-recording all of the lectures. So I'll have those up again, but still only do one a week. So this week we're focusing on chapter 7. Next Wednesday, we'll focus on chapter 8. So any other questions before we wrap up? All right. Thank you guys for participating. And again, I will have this recording posted up shortly so that you guys can watch it later if you need to go back to it to refer to it or if other students need it. But otherwise, I'll be looking forward to hearing from you this week or seeing you next week.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a good week. Stay safe.
You too.
You too.
Thanks.